Yes, dear students. So, sixth class. Again, we are going to start up our chapter or continuing with the same chapter, that is from gathering to growing food. Dear students, now the earlier people they have started living a settled life. Many of the archaeologists they have found the traces of huts, houses at some sites. So here the question arises why they have started making huts or houses. When they started growing crops or plants, so they have to live a settled life. So for that purpose, they started living on the same place. So because they have to give the water to the plants, they have to protect the crops from the animals, they have to wait to get it ripened. So for this purpose they started living on the same place, and for started living on the same place they started making their huts. They may have also provided shelter in cold weather also. Archaeologists they have also found some cooking huts both inside and outside the huts, which suggests depending on the weather people could cook food either indoors or outdoors. Means they were in the habit of using fire in both the areas, maybe inside the house or outside the house. They have also found some of the pit houses that may be used in different times of the earlier times, like the Paleolithic tool, there, and they have found many of the tools in many sites, in Paleolithic tools and Neolithic also. According to the tools, they have given the name to the proper era. They, uh, they include tools that were polished to give a fine cutting edge. On the basis of different kind of tools they have decided or they have divided the things into different ages, like the Paleolithic age, Mesolithic age, and the Neolithic age. Now we are going to discuss all such things, and they also depends on the growing of crops also. Mortars and pestles are used for grinding grain even today also. So this type of stones they were used to grind the produce. Even nowadays also we are using the same thing. At the same time, tools of the Paleolithic types continued to be made and used, and remember some tools were also made of bone. Many kind of the earthen pots have also been found there. These were something decorated, sometimes decorated, and were used for storing things. So they have some earthen pots also, like one picture is given here. So they also decorate that. They may be used to cook food, and they may be used to store the grain also. Now they became an important part of their diet because they were used and to store the thing. And now the people they began weaving clothes using different kind of material. For example, cotton that could now be grown at that time, because many of the archaeologists they had found some traces of cotton also. Did things change everywhere and all at once? No, not quite. In many years, the men and women still continued to hunt and gather food. Elsewhere, people adopted farming and herding slowly. Means that things cannot come in a while, you can say, like this. No, it took many years, hundreds of years to change the things. In some areas the people they started growing crops, in other areas still the earlier people they are still hunter gatherer at that time. Now the next is about their customs and practices. Archaeologists they are not able to tell us directly what type of things they were having at that time, but they used to pray, that was final, that is cleared. Second thing, at that time they were used to pray the natural gods or the natural things like water, air, fire, because they always try to use them, and they always use them to protect them also from the other things. So many of the farmers and the herders, they live in groups, and they called as tribes. And why they lived in groups? Reason again the same, maybe for the protection purpose. So while living in a group, they were able to protect easily from the wild animals, and maybe from the other groups also. So certain customs and practices, they may also have existed at that time. As I have told you that they used to pray the natural powers at that time. Now a closer look for the Mehergarh. This site is located in a fertile plain near the Bolan Pass, which is one of the most important routes into the Iran. Mehergarh was probably one of the places where women and men learned to grow barley and wheat. They also reared some of the animals, sheep, goats, for the first time in this area. It is one of the earliest village we have knew about. Means many of the excavation we have done, but and in that excavation, Mehergarh is the earliest villages we have ever found. So many kinds of evidences we have found, like the animals bone from the earliest level. These also include the bones of wild animals such as deer and pig, and later levels, some herd, as they have started the herding. So some bones of sheep and goat we have also found there, and most commonly they used to herd these animals in their houses. And next, other finds at Mehergarh include the remains of square or rectangular houses. So, what type of houses they were having at that time? Square and rectangular. Each house had a four or more compartments for different areas, for different things. And one part may be used as for the storage purpose, where people, and the next part, when people die, their relatives and friends generally pay respect to them. People look after them, perhaps in the belief that there is some form of life after that. Burial is one such arrangement. Several burial sites have been found at Mehergarh. In one instance, the dead person was buried with goats, which were probably meant to serve as food in the next world. Yes, my dear student, here I want to mention one thing. At that time, the people, they believed that there is a life after death also. So they always used to bury the bodies, and they also used to bury some of the basic things which were required for their life, for their next life, you can say. So they also bury some food, grains, some animals, utensils, different tools, each and everything which a person was required at that time. They used to bury all such things with a burial. The burial sites, they were separate, and all the early people, they used to pay respect, because they always believed that from one life they move to another life. So that's why they always pay their essential commodities to him, to that person, so easily he or she may use that in their next life. So different parts were there in their houses also. Now the next is the Dajoli heading. So these are some of the areas which we have found in excavation sites. The different areas, the different people, the different types of things they were having. Always we found these excavation sites near the river valleys. As I have discussed so many times, कि maximum these civilizations we have found near the river valleys because of the availability of fresh water, because they needed water for each and everything. They need water for their plants also. They need water for their crops also. They needed water for themselves also. So that's why we have found these civilization near the river valleys. So in the Joli heading, this is a site on the hills near the Brahmaputra Valley, close to the routes leading into China and Myanmar. Here I want to mention that the routes they were used to go to China and Myanmar. Later on, the trade was developed due to these routes with other countries. So some of the stone tools, including mortars, pestles, have been found there. These stone tools indicate that people were probably growing grain and preparing food, as we have discussed in previous slide also, that these two tools they were used to grind the grain. This also indicates that they were preparing food from it, and it also include a stone that may have been brought from China. Also common here, finds of tools made of fossil wood, ancient wood at that time, and that was hardened into a stone and pottery. So many of the things we have found there, the many of the pottery items, different kind of tools, different kind of stones that were used by the earliest people at that time to make their life easier. So we have discussed how a hunter gatherer turns into the growing of crops. How from a earliest for the movement of the earliest people, they turned into a settled life. All the things we have discussed. Now you have to read this chapter again, and if any query is there, we will definitely solve it. And in our next part, we will just recapitulate all such things again for the better understanding of the things.